The rain poured like a curse from the sky. It was past midnight. Wind howled through the trees, lashing water against the windows of the small brick house. The porch light flickered. A lone figure stood soaked to the bone, her trembling hand resting on the curve of her pregnant belly. "Hannah, please," she whispered to herself. "Stay calm. Just talk to him." She knocked again, softer this time, but her knuckles trembled. The door creaked open. Timothy Dawson stood in the doorway, arms crossed. His face was carved from stone, no warmth, no welcome, just cold judgment. "You shouldn't have come back here," he said. Hannah blinked through the rain. "Timothy, it's me. This is still my home. I'm carrying your children. For God's sake, save it." His voice was sharp. "Rebecca told me everything." "What?" Her heart dropped into her stomach. "You've been sneaking around." "With other men." "That's not true," she cried, stepping forward. "I swear to you I haven't looked at anyone else. Rebecca's lying. She's hated me since the day we met." Timothy laughed bitterly. "She saw you at the market, laughing with some guy like old lovers. The tailor? He was fixing my dress for your mother's birthday. She had proof." "There's nothing to prove, Tim. It's a lie. Please, you have to believe me." His silence was worse than a slap. He turned, stepped inside, and came back with a worn duffel bag. He threw it at her feet. "Take your things and leave." The bag hit the wet ground with a dull thud. "You're kicking me out?" Her voice cracked. "At midnight? In the middle of a storm? While I'm pregnant?" Timothy didn't answer. His jaw was tight, his eyes elsewhere. "I don't even know if those children are mine anymore." The words cut like razors. Hannah staggered back, one hand covering her mouth. How can you say that to me?" "Leave," he said flatly, "and don't come back." Behind him, the light in the hallway flicked off. No one else came. Not his mother, not even Rebecca. Hannah imagined her inside, watching, victorious. The door slammed shut, and just like that, Hannah was outside again, alone. She stood there for a moment, frozen, the rain clinging to her skin like punishment. The weight in her stomach felt heavier than ever. She turned and walked. No destination, no umbrella, just the road, mud squelching beneath her feet, the storm swallowing her whole. She walked for hours. Her shoes were soaked through, her coat useless. Lightning danced across the sky. Every thunderclap felt like the world screaming with her. At one point, she collapsed against a tree and screamed into the void. No one answered. Not the world, not God, not even the man who once promised to love her. "I didn't do anything." "Wrong," she whispered to the darkness. "I didn't." But the wind only howled louder. By the time her legs gave out, it was past 2 a.m. She had wandered to the edge of the town, where large gates marked the entrance to a private estate. Her vision blurred. The last thing she saw was the initials engraved on a brass plate, E. King. She fell face first into the gravel and didn't move again. "Sir," a voice echoed, "there's someone at the gate." Edward King looked up from his fireplace, where he'd been reading a dusty journal and sipping whiskey. His butler appeared in the doorway, dripping wet. "A woman," the man continued. "She collapsed. Looks pregnant." Edward set down his glass. "Call the nurse. I'll get my coat." Within minutes, he was outside, umbrella in hand, eyes scanning the darkness. The guard pointed, and there she was, a soaked silhouette, crumpled like a discarded rag doll. "She's just a girl," Edward murmured, kneeling beside her. Her lips were blue, her skin ice cold. "Get her inside, now." Inside the estate, heat enveloped her like a blanket. The servants worked swiftly, drying her, wrapping her in quilts, checking her pulse. A nurse arrived, fussing over her with practiced urgency. By dawn, Hannah opened her eyes. She blinked slowly, registering the chandelier above her, the soft pillows beneath her head, the faint scent of antiseptic and fresh wood. "You're safe," a calm voice said. She turned. A man in his late 50s sat in a leather chair beside her bed. He wore a navy sweater and glasses, his gaze kind, but wary. "Where am I?" she asked, voice hoarse. "My home," he replied. "You collapsed at my gate last night. What's your name?" "Hannah." He nodded. "Hannah Williams. You're lucky we found you. You were freezing." Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't know where else to go." "You don't need to explain," he said gently. "Just rest. No one here will hurt you." For the first time in hours, maybe years, Hannah exhaled without fear. A soft knock broke the silence. A woman peeked in. "Sir, the police are asking about a missing woman." "No need," Edward said. "She's not missing. She's exactly where she needs to be." Hannah tried to sit up. "I'll leave soon. I don't want to impose." "You'll stay," he interrupted. "As long as you need. My name is Edward King. This house has more empty rooms than people. And you—" He looked at her belly, then at her eyes. "You need a safe place. So stay." A wave of gratitude hit her chest like heat. She couldn't speak. She simply nodded and let the tears fall. The scent of warm bread stirred her from sleep. Hannah blinked slowly, uncertain of where she was. A soft blanket covered her. Morning light poured in through the tall window, illuminating cream-colored walls and the faint floral pattern of the bed linens. A gentle fire crackled in the hearth across the room. She tried to sit up. Pain tugged at her back. "Easy," said a voice. Edward King stood near the door holding a cup of tea. He crossed the room and placed it on the nightstand beside her. "Chamomile, it'll help." She stared at him, confused. "You were in rough shape," he said. "Rain, mud, exhaustion. We thought we'd have to take you to the hospital, but you stabilized. Strong woman." Hannah glanced down at her belly, which felt like a quiet drum beneath the covers. "How long was I asleep?" "About 12 hours, Edward replied. "Long? Enough for the staff to start worrying you'd wake up swinging?" She gave a faint, tired smile. "I'm not much of a fighter. I'm not sure I believe that." They sat in silence. She finally reached for the tea with both hands, grateful for the warmth. "Thank you," she murmured. Edward watched her for a moment. "No need to thank me. I just opened a door." A lot of people wouldn't. True. But a lot of people don't live in a house with 20 empty rooms and only regrets for company. He said it lightly, but she sensed something beneath the words. Later that day, Edward returned with a bowl of soup and a gentle knock on the door. She was sitting up this time, looking out the window. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. She shrugged. "It's your house." "Technically, yes, but today, it's your room." He set the tray down and pulled up a chair. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The clinking of the spoon and her quiet eating filled the space. "You don't strike me as someone used to being taken care of," he said. "I'm not. Do you want to tell me how you ended up unconscious at my gate?" She paused, then set the spoon down. "My husband kicked me out," she said. "At midnight, during the storm." Edward raised an eyebrow. "Pregnant and all?" She nodded. "Sounds like a special kind of coward." Her eyes didn't flinch. "He believed someone else over me, lied to my face, told me the children might not be his." Edward leaned back, folding his arms. "And are they?" "Yes." Her voice cracked slightly. "They're his. I've never—" She swallowed hard. "But he didn't even let me speak." Silence stretched between them. Edward tapped his fingers on the armrest. "I once believed a lie, too. Cost me my daughter." Hannah looked up. She was 17, got into trouble. Someone blamed her for something she didn't do. I doubted her. Just once. That was all it took. She never looked at me the same again. Drove off one night and never came back. He stood, walking to the window. I'd give anything to take that moment back. Hannah watched him closely. I'm sorry, she said softly. He turned, smiling faintly. Me too. That evening, one of the maids brought fresh clothes to Hannah's room. Simple leggings, a soft sweater, clean undergarments. A toothbrush, comb, and a bar of lavender soap were left by the sink. Hannah stood in the bathroom staring at her reflection. Her face was pale, lips cracked. Her hair had dried in thick, frizzy waves. Dark circles haunted her eyes. But there was something else now. A flicker, a hint of defiance. She wasn't dead, not yet. She washed her face slowly, then her hands, then her arms. Like peeling off the hours of humiliation and cold, layer by layer. In the following days, Hannah moved slowly around the house. She took short walks down the long hallways, always careful not to overstep. The estate was grand, polished wood, arched doorways, and large windows that let in sunlight like a gift. Portraits of old men and women hung on the walls, watching silently. She spent most of her time in the library, seated near the window in the afternoon light. Books surrounded her, thick ones with titles she couldn't pronounce, but they comforted her. Sometimes Edward would join her. He never pried. He brought books and read aloud. Sometimes he simply sat nearby, flipping through papers while she stared out at the garden. You don't have to pretend you're invisible, Hannah, he said one day. She looked at him, startled. This house doesn't need another ghost. You're not a burden. She hesitated. I just don't know where I fit. I don't want to take advantage. You're not, he replied. Besides, I've had people stay here who drain me dry. You, on the other hand, are so quiet. I'm starting to miss arguments. She smiled a little. I've been through enough fights for a lifetime. Good, he said. That means you'll be excellent. Company? One afternoon, Hannah was sitting on a bench in the garden when Edward approached, carrying 2 mugs of cocoa. I saw you rearranging books earlier, he said. Don't feel obliged to work for your stay. I wasn't working, she said, quickly. I was just trying to be helpful. You are helpful, but you're also not a maid. I can tell. She turned to him, unsure how to answer. You're sharp, he continued, organized, disciplined, and above all, kind. People don't fake kindness well. He handed her the cocoa. She accepted it, stunned. You remind me of her sometimes, he said. Your daughter? He nodded. What was her name? Evelyn. She sipped quietly. What happened to her? She died 4 years ago. Car accident. Her partner fell asleep at the wheel. I'm so sorry. He shook his head. Life doesn't hand out fairness. Only chances. Sometimes second ones. Later that week, Hannah sat with the housekeeper helping sort a shipment of supplies. Edward walked in and paused at the doorway, watching her. The 2 women were laughing about something, papers scattered across the table. She's got that room running like a clock, the housekeeper whispered when Hannah left. I wouldn't be surprised if she could manage an office. Edward didn't respond, but the thought stayed with him. One night, a storm rolled in. Not as violent as the one from before, but enough to stir the old ghosts again. Hannah lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The crack of thunder made her flinch. The memories came flooding back. The porch, the accusation, the bag hitting the bay, mud. She turned onto her side, hand over her belly. The twins moved, just slightly. I won't let the world break you, she whispered to them. Then she closed her eyes, letting the storm pass without her fear. The next morning, she found Edward in the sunroom with a notepad and 2 mugs of coffee. You're up early, she said. So are you. He handed her 1 mug. I've been thinking, he said. What are your plans for the baby? She hesitated. Babies? Twins? He blinked. Double the trouble. She gave a tired laugh. I don't know. I have no money, no job, no home. I've been too busy surviving to make plans. Well, I have one, he said, flipping his notepad toward her. It was blank. You can start here. Learn the ropes at my company. I'll teach you. You don't have to decide now. But I see something in you. You're capable of more than you... No. Her eyes widened. You'd do that for me? He nodded. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering investment. You'll work. Learn. Earn your place. She swallowed hard. Emotion caught in her throat. Why me? She asked. Because you didn't break, he replied. Even after being thrown out into the storm, you didn't crawl, you stood up and walked. 3 months later, the house smelled like antiseptic and baby powder. The labor had started at dawn, quietly, subtly, but by mid-morning the contractions came fast and unforgiving. Edward had called the private doctor before Hannah could even ask. Now, the guest room on the east wing was filled with soft voices, warm towels, and the hushed urgency of new life about to begin. Edward stood outside the door, pacing, his phone. In one hand, a towel clenched in the other. She's strong, the nurse said, popping her head out briefly. But it's twins. It'll take time. I'm not going anywhere, Edward replied. Inside, Hannah gritted her teeth, sweat streaming down her forehead. Her fingers clenched the bedsheets like lifelines. You're doing well, the doctor encouraged. Almost there. But Hannah barely heard him. Her mind was a blur of pain and flashes. The rain, the closed door, the bag in the mud, the long walk. Then Edward's warm eyes, the garden, the books. A scream escaped her lips, and the world faded. Then, crying. First one, then another. 2 cries. 2 lives. When she opened her eyes, she was surrounded by light. Edward was beside her, eyes red from lack of sleep. In his arms, bundled tightly, were 2 tiny creatures wrapped in soft blue and pink blankets. Meet your team, he whispered. Hannah smiled through tears. Her body felt broken, but her heart had never been more whole. Samuel, she whispered, looking at the boy. And Rachel. Edward handed them to her one at a time. Her arms trembled, not from weakness, but from awe. They're perfect, he said. They're everything. She looked up at him. You stayed. Of course I did, he said softly. Where else would I be? The first weeks passed in a haze of diapers, bottles, sleepless nights, and firsts. Hannah barely left the nursery. Edward had insisted she take her time, offering help with everything from groceries to doctor visits. At night, she rocked the twins by the window, humming soft lullabies, her gaze wandering to the sky outside. Sometimes Edward would join her with coffee and silence. He never imposed. He just appeared. Present. You know, he said once, watching the babies sleep. Most people crumble after what you've been through. I almost did, Hannah replied, but I couldn't afford to. By the 3rd month, she insisted on helping around the house. Edward resisted at first, but Hannah was persuasive and stubborn. I need to feel useful, she said. Let me earn my keep. So she started small, organizing the pantry, cleaning the library, helping the cook with breakfast. The staff liked her. She was efficient, kind, and sharp. She noticed details, the crack in the baseboard, the missing spice jar, the loose window latch in the nursery. Does she ever sit down? Edward asked the butler one afternoon. Not unless she's holding both babies at once, sir. Eventually, Hannah started helping with the mail. Then the invoices. Then the books. It was small at first. She asked questions, took notes, tried to understand how the business worked. Edward noticed she picked up systems faster than some of his managers. One afternoon, he found her in the study with a calculator and an open ledger. These numbers aren't lining up, she muttered, pencil in mouth. You're not wrong, he said, impressed. That department's been sloppy lately. She looked up, startled. I wasn't snooping, I'm not angry, he said. I'm impressed. She relaxed, cheeks flushed. You ever study accounting? No, she said. But I like solving problems. He nodded slowly. Then I have a proposition. They sat across from each other the next morning. The twins slept soundly in their crib nearby. Edward slid a folder across the table. I want you to work with me, not as charity, as training. She hesitated. I don't have a degree, no formal education. I've had MBAs who couldn't. Spot what you did in those ledgers. She opened the folder. Inside were printed schedules, mentor outlines, and notes. I'll teach you everything I know. Logistics, contracts, clients, if you're willing. Hannah looked down at her hands. They were no longer the hands of a scared, broken woman. They were hands that had held life, built safety, cleaned, cooked, and endured. I'm willing. The following weeks were a whirlwind. Hannah started shadowing. Edward during meetings, taking notes, organizing files, tracking vendor issues. She asked questions, sharp ones. She learned to handle negotiations, read between lines in contracts, and eventually manage small accounts. Her confidence grew. She dressed simply but neatly, tied her hair back, walked with quiet precision. Edward often found himself watching her with pride, not just in her growth, but in her resolve. She never demanded attention. She earned it one day. After a successful pitch call with a supplier, he turned to her and said, "You're a force," she laughed. "I'm still learning. You're building." By month 7, she had her own desk at the office. By month 8, she was managing a regional distribution schedule. The twins spent their days with a nanny Hannah trusted like family. Every evening she was home by their bedtime, never missing a night. Edward watched it all unfold like witnessing something rare, a flower blooming in winter defiantly. "You're not surviving anymore," he told her one evening. She looked up from her laptop. "What do you mean?" "You're building something," she smiled. "For them," he nodded. "And maybe for yourself too." But even as the days brightened, a shadow always lingered. Some nights when the twins were asleep and the house was quiet, Hannah would sit alone on the balcony, looking out into the distance, not with bitterness, but with memory. Timothy, his betrayal. The silence after the door slammed. She didn't cry, not anymore. She just remembered. And then she turned her focus back to the present, the future. Samuel, Rachel, the two hearts that beat beside her own. They had given her a reason not just to endure, but to rise. 5 years later, the woman who once collapsed at the gates of Edward King's estate stood at the head of a mahogany conference table. Hannah adjusted her glasses, clicked the remote in her hand, and watched the screen behind her light up. A clean logo appeared. Phoenix Skies. "This isn't just another air charter service," she said to the small group of investors. "It's a tailored experience, agile, safe, and above all, human-centered. We fly executives, emergency responders, and high-priority cargo with care and efficiency." A silence followed, then murmurs, then nods. Edward leaned back in his chair, smiling slightly, arms folded like a proud father pretending not to be. After the presentation ended, the room applauded. Hannah's hand didn't shake. Her voice never cracked. She had arrived. The journey to this day had not been instant. It was carved through discipline and sacrifice. After mastering operations at Edward's logistics firm, she had gone on to complete a 2-year accelerated business program overseas. Edward covered part of the cost. The rest she earned through project bonuses, late nights, and relentless commitment. She took online classes while feeding Rachel at 3 a.m. She reviewed contracts while rocking Samuel through colic. She didn't sleep much, but she didn't complain. She knew what she was building, not just a company, not just a new life, a resurrection. "Why Phoenix Skies?" a reporter asked during an early press briefing. Hannah had smiled gently. "Because I burned, and then I rose." The story spread faster than she expected. The CEO who started with nothing. The woman who once scrubbed floors now flying high-net-worth individuals and dignitaries across the continent. Within the first year, the company had 1 helicopter and a leased jet. By year 3, 2 jets and contracts with 4 multinational firms. Year 5, a fleet of 5, her own maintenance crew, and exclusive access to regional hubs in 5 countries. But through it all, Hannah kept the core small, lean, controlled, ethical. Her office was sleek but never flashy. A single photo sat on the corner of her desk. Samuel and Rachel, age 6, holding model airplanes and grinning wide. They were her anchors. At home, she was still mom. She made them breakfast herself, dropped them at school when she wasn't traveling, answered every school project with the same focus she gave to corporate deals. "You're a superhero," Rachel said once. "I'm your mother," Hannah replied. "That's even better," Edward continued as board advisor and occasional voice of reason. "You know," he said during one of their monthly strategy lunches, "there's a thing that happens when people succeed." "What's that?" she asked, sipping her tea. "They forget why they started." She paused. "I'll never forget," she said, "because it wasn't just about rising. It was about proving I didn't deserve to be thrown away." He nodded slowly. "Just don't let that pain become your compass forever." She said nothing, but those words stayed with her. The pain hadn't disappeared. It had simply found a shelf in her mind, a quiet, dusted shelf labeled "Before." She never spoke Timothy's name, never returned to the town. But sometimes, when the twins asked about their father, she would look out the window and say, "You'll understand one day." They didn't press. They trusted her. Samuel was analytical and calm, much like Edward. Rachel had a fire behind her eyes, the same spark that had once pushed Hannah to knock on a door in the middle of a storm. They grew fast, and she saw parts of herself in both. One night, Rachel burst into the study holding a drawing. "It's our family jet," she said proudly. "It has wings like a bird, and it saves people." Hannah smiled, kneeling. "You want to fly too?" "No," Rachel said seriously. "I want to help people who can't." The answer nearly broke her. That night, she stared at the ceiling for hours, thinking about the path they were all on, how close it had come to ending before it even began, how she had been seconds from disappearing, nameless and unseen in a stranger's reign. But here they were, alive, whole, growing. Then came the expansion. Phoenix Skies was invited to consult on regional transport strategies. Governments sought her insight. Private investors started calling her one of the sharpest women in aviation. She deflected the praise. She stayed behind the scenes when possible, but her name started to mean something beyond just business. It meant survival, reimagined. It meant elegance forged through suffering. One evening, as she stood on the tarmac watching one of her jets take off, Edward appeared beside her. "It's funny," he said. "You're the only person I know who looks calm while commanding metal birds." She chuckled. "They're loud, but they listen." He looked at her profile. "When's the last time you went back?" She knew what he meant. "I haven't. Do you want to?" "Not yet." "Why?" She hesitated. "Because I want to return with something to say, not just something to prove." Edward was quiet. A moment. "And when you do, will it be peace or closure you're after?" "I honestly don't know." Months later, she received an invitation to speak at an international women's leadership summit in Cape Town. Her segment, From Grounded to Greatness. She stood behind the podium in a navy suit, hair pulled back, her voice clear and commanding. "I don't come from wealth," she began. "I come from silence, from locked doors, from rain, betrayal, and having to carry more than one heart in a storm." The crowd was still. "But I also come from kindness, from a man who opened his gate, from children who gave me reason, from work, hard, honest, quiet work." After the event, a line of young women waited to meet her. One girl, no older than 20, said, "You're why I haven't given up yet?" Hannah smiled. "Then don't." Back home that night, she sat with the twins watching an old movie. Rachel turned to her. "Mom, do you think we'll ever meet our dad?" Hannah didn't flinch. "Maybe, someday, but only if you want to." Samuel looked thoughtful. "He left us, didn't he?" "No," Hannah said. "He lost us." They both went quiet. But something shifted in the air. A door creaked open, not yet walked through, but no longer sealed. The sky was clear over Dawson Town the morning the jet descended. It wasn't just any aircraft. Sleek, silver, and whisper quiet, it cut through the clouds like a blade of light. Children dropped their bicycles to look up. Shopkeepers stepped outside. Phones rose to the sky. At the airstrip, 2 black SUVs waited silently behind the security fence. The jet's wheels kissed the tarmac with precision. A moment later, the door opened and the staircase unfolded. 2 figures appeared first, a young man and woman in matching navy suits, sunglasses, straight backs, calm faces. Then she stepped out. Hannah Williams, older, stronger, dressed in cream, timeless. The wind caught her coat like wings. The crowd didn't cheer. It was too stunned for that. They whispered, "That's her." She came back. Timothy Dawson sat on a splintered bench in front of the old house. His hands trembled as he tried to steady a chipped mug of tea. The once proud estate was now crumbling. The white paint had peeled into strips. The garden had turned wild. The driveway was cracked, weeds crawling through every line like veins. Inside, his mother coughed in the background. "Timothy!" she called out. "Did you take your medicine?" "I will," he muttered, barely hearing her. He looked toward the town, toward the sky. He'd felt something shift, a wind maybe, a warning. He didn't need the news to tell him. He saw the photos within hours. People were buzzing. The old gossip lines came back to life with a vengeance. Hannah Williams, the girl who left in the rain, the girl who had twins and disappeared, the one Rebecca hated, the one Timothy threw out. And now, EO, private jet, national, coverage, the twins, beautiful, confident, untouchable. Timothy sat in the living room staring at a dusty picture frame, a photo of Rebecca on their wedding day, smiling with venom hidden behind her perfect teeth. She had died 5 years ago, cancer. But before she died, she confessed everything. "I lied," she had whispered from the hospital bed. "I know," he had whispered back, hollow. "I was jealous. I destroyed her. I chased her away," he had murmured. She was innocent. The memory played in his mind like a broken reel. Since that confession, life had punished him in silence. His transport business failed. His partners betrayed him. The office shut down. His cars were repossessed. His name faded. He'd been left with his mother, a handful of unpaid bills, and regret that grew like rust in his bones. And now she was back, with wings. Back at the airstrip, Hannah walked past the press and the stunned townspeople without a word. A reporter called out, "Ms. Williams, is your visit business or personal?" She paused, lowered her sunglasses. "This trip is personal," she said. "Very personal." Rachel and Samuel walked beside her like sentinels. The cars drove off toward the hotel in silence. That night, the mayor called a late meeting. "We need to act," he told his staff. "This woman has influence. She could invest, build. We should welcome her." The same people who once whispered behind her back now rehearsed speeches of admiration. And in a small cafe, an older woman whispered to her friend, "I remember when she used to scrub floors. Now she owns a fleet." The friend nodded. God truly has a sense of irony. At the Blue Horizon Hotel, Hannah looked out over the town from the balcony. Rachel sat on the couch flipping through news articles. "They're calling you the Phoenix of Dawson," she said. "Fitting," Samuel added. "You did rise from the ashes." Hannah didn't respond. Her eyes were fixed on the horizon, where her story began. "Are you ready to see him?" Rachel asked. "Not yet," Hannah said. "Tomorrow." The next morning, Timothy was sweeping the front yard when he heard the crunch of tires on gravel. He looked up. The SUV parked just outside the old gate. His body froze. The back door opened. Out stepped Samuel, then Rachel, then her. He dropped the broom. Hannah walked forward, her eyes locked on his. She didn't speak at first. He swallowed hard. "Hannah." Her name cracked in his throat like glass. She stood still, composed. "Hello, Timothy." He looked at the twins. Samuel had his jawline. Rachel had her mother's eyes. "My God," he whispered. "Is it really?" "Yes," Hannah said. "These are your children." He staggered back, hand on the gate for support. "I didn't know," he said. Rebecca lied. "I didn't find out until it was too late. I swear to you, you didn't even let me speak," Hannah cut in. Her voice wasn't loud, but it sliced through his babble with surgical precision. He fell to his knees. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I was a fool. I lost everything. But losing you, that was the real punishment." Samuel stepped forward. "We came to see where we came from," Rachel added, arms folded. "Not to hurt you, just to see the truth." Timothy looked at them speechless. "They're everything you threw away," Hannah said. Inside the house, his mother watched from the window, tears streaming down her face. "I told him you were a good girl," she whispered. Hannah saw her and gave a small, respectful nod. "Mama Dawson," she said. The old woman opened the door slowly. "You're alive and strong." "I am," Hannah replied gently. They embraced, not out of forgiveness, but recognition, pain, memory, weight. Suddenly, another figure stepped out from the back hallway. Timothy turned. His face went pale. "Rebecca?" he gasped. It wasn't her ghost. Just an old photo in his hand, one he kept even after her death. "I looked at this every day," he murmured, showing it to Hannah. But it never brought peace. Hannah didn't touch the photo. She looked at the man kneeling in front of her, hollowed, broken, aging. "You didn't just throw away gold," she said quietly. "You threw it into the fire." She turned, and it came back something you can never afford again. The three of them, Hannah, Rachel, and Samuel, walked back to the SUV. Timothy didn't rise. He stayed on his knees, watching them fade from view. His hands trembled, clutching the photo to his chest like a lifeline. The porch behind him creaked. The wind carried no rain, but the same chill from years ago crept up his spine. He had built a grave of silence, and now the ghosts were alive again, but they no longer belonged to him. The next morning, the air felt heavier. Hannah sat at the edge of the hotel bed, hands clasped, staring out the window as the town slowly came alive. Church bells rang faintly in the distance. A delivery truck rumbled by. Life moved on outside, unaware that something inside her was beginning to settle, or maybe stir. Rachel emerged from the bathroom. "Are we going back?" Hannah nodded. "Once." Samuel stood by the door, already dressed. "What if he's not ready?" Hannah turned to them both. "This isn't about him being ready. It's about us finishing what needs to be said." Timothy hadn't slept. The image of Hannah standing at the gate with his children had replayed in his mind all night. Her words echoed louder than the wind. Outside, you didn't just throw away gold. You threw it into the fire. He sat in the kitchen, unmoving, a stale cup of coffee in his hand. His mother shuffled in, wrapped in a shawl. "You should prepare," she said gently. "For what?" "For when they come again. You won't get another chance." He looked at her, the woman who had once turned her back as Hannah cried in the rain. "I ruined it," he whispered. "Yes," she said, "but you're still alive. Do something with that." The knock came just before noon. Timothy opened the door. This time, he didn't freeze. Hannah stood simply dressed in a white blouse and gray slacks. Her presence still hit like thunder. Behind her were Rachel and Samuel, silent and steady. "Do you remember the night it rained?" she asked. He nodded, barely breathing. "Yes. You threw me out while I was pregnant. You believed a lie over the woman you vowed to love." He closed his eyes, pain washing over his face. "I was young and angry and blind. You were cruel," Rachel said suddenly, her voice hard. "She was carrying us." Samuel stepped closer. "We grew up without you, not because you died, but because you gave up on us before we were even born." Timothy's legs gave out and he sank into the old wooden chair on the porch. "I thought she was gone forever," he murmured, "and I didn't deserve to go looking." Then the front door creaked. His mother stepped out slowly, eyes watery. "Oh, Hannah," she whispered. Hannah looked at the older woman, smaller now, frailer, but familiar. "I told him," she said, reaching for Hannah's hand. "I told him you were good. That night, I said it wasn't right, but no one listened." "I remember," Hannah replied quietly. They embraced, brief and bittersweet. A sudden voice broke the silence. "I thought you were dead." Everyone turned. There, stepping out of the hallway, was Rebecca's sister, Marion, a woman Hannah hadn't seen in decades. She held a small envelope in her hand, her eyes darting nervously between everyone. "What are you doing here?" Timothy asked, his voice sharp. "I came to return this," Marion said, handing the envelope to Hannah. Inside was a torn letter, Rebecca's confession, written in shaky handwriting days before her death. "I lied about Hannah. I made it all up. I told Timothy she cheated because I wanted him to hate her." Rachel read it aloud slowly. Her hands trembled as she passed it to Samuel. Timothy buried his face in his hands. Hannah stared at the letter, not with rage, but with that cold ache of truth finally stepping into the light. "She took everything from us," Rachel whispered, "and she died without ever facing it." "No," Hannah said firmly. "She faced it. In those final moments, that was her reckoning." Timothy looked up, broken. "Can you forgive me?" Hannah held his gaze for a long time. "I didn't come back for revenge," she said. "I came so my children could know the truth, and so you could see what you turned away." He reached out, but she didn't take his hand. "You don't get to hold me now," she said gently. "You lost that right the moment you closed the door in my face." Inside the house, silence reigned. Rachel crossed her arms. "You left us in a storm, but she built us in the sun." Timothy looked at her, his voice cracking. "You look just like her, but fiercer." "I had to be," Rachel replied. "I was raised by a woman who had to survive everything." Samuel's expression was softer. He crouched down beside his father. "You can't undo the past," he said, "but you can decide what you do with what's left." Timothy nodded slowly, barely able to speak. As they stood to leave, Hannah turned back one last time. "We'll be in town for a few more days," she said. "We're staying at the Blue Horizon." He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came. She walked away with her children, not triumphant but clear. The door behind her no longer held any power. That evening, the hotel suite was quiet. Rachel sat cross-legged on the couch, arms wrapped around her knees. Samuel leaned on the windowsill. Hannah stood at the counter making tea. "Mom," Rachel said after a long silence, "why did you come back?" Hannah poured hot water into the cup and paused, because healing doesn't happen from a distance. She turned to them, voice calm. "You have a right to know where you came from, and I had the right to be seen as the woman I am, not the lie someone painted of me." Samuel nodded slowly. "I think I understand now." Rachel looked up. "And if he wants to make things right, he can start by being honest with himself first." There was a knock at the door. Samuel opened it. Timothy stood in the hallway holding a small photo frame. "May I come in?" Samuel looked at Hannah. She nodded once. Timothy stepped inside, holding the photo like it was glass. "I kept this," he said. "It's from the day you wore that yellow dress. You were laughing, holding a flower. I've looked at it every day since you left." He placed it gently on the table. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said, "but I want you to know I did love you. I just didn't know how to protect that love." He looked at the twins. "And I failed you both. Completely." He sat down, head in his hands. "I let pride blind me. I thought love was supposed to be easy. I didn't know it meant choosing someone even when it's hard." The room fell silent. Rachel stood. Her tone was ice. "You had 27 years to think. Mom built an empire while you were chasing shadows." "Rachel," Hannah said gently. "She needs to hear it," Rachel insisted. "You lost a woman who was gold." Timothy's eyes filled again. "I know." Samuel stepped forward. "What happens next is Mom's decision." Hannah looked at Timothy. "I don't hate you," she said, "but I will never forget." He nodded. "I just needed to say I'm proud of what you became, and I'm sorry I couldn't be the man you deserved." Hannah rose. "You'll see us again, but not as broken pieces of what you threw away." She turned to leave. At the door, she paused. "Timothy," she said, "you didn't just lose gold. You threw it into fire, and it came back as something you'll never afford again." Then she walked out, head high, her children at her side. A sign appeared on the edge of Dawson Town one crisp morning, white background. Bold blue lettering, "Coming soon. Phoenix School for Girls. Where broken wings learn to fly most townsfolk." Paused, read it twice, then stood in stunned silence. The plot of land where it stood was not just any land. It was the site of the old Dawson estate, Timothy's family home. Once full of pride, now sold in foreclosure. Forgotten by most, not by Hannah. Weeks earlier, after returning to the hotel that night, she had made a quiet call. "Secure the land," she told her legal advisor. "The old Dawson property? Don't negotiate, just pay the full price and move fast." Now, bulldozers cleared the weeds. Workers marked foundations. Surveyors measured lines across the earth where her tears once soaked the ground. Rachel and Samuel stood beside her one morning, both silent as they watched the heavy machinery move. "You're really doing it?" Rachel said softly. "A school here. I promised myself," Hannah said, "that if I ever had power, I'd build something for girls like me." Samuel turned to her. "And the name?" She smiled. "Phoenix, again." A public announcement was made. The mayor organized a dinner. In her honor, cameras, flowers, a banner that read, "Dawson Town, honors Hannah Williams, CEO of Phoenix Skies Reporters," packed the corners of the community hall. Local business owners arrived in borrowed suits. The choir from her old church even offered to sing. As she entered in a deep navy gown, people clapped. Phones flashed. The applause didn't stop until she reached the head table. Mayor David, a round man with a thick mustache and a showman's charm, took the microphone. "This town has many stories," he began, "but few as powerful as this one. A girl once, forgotten, now the face of progress and pride. He raised a glass. To Hannah. May she guide us into the skies. When it was her turn to speak, the room fell into a hush. Hannah stood behind the microphone, poised, calm. Thank you for the warm welcome, she began. It's more than I expected, and far more than I received when I needed it most. The room stilled. I remember being 17, she continued, standing outside a house not far from here, soaked, scared, and unwanted. Some guests shifted in their seats. I remember faces turning away, people pretending not to see. I was alone, pregnant, and judged. No one breathed. But I wasn't. Broken, she said. Just unseen. She let the silence settle. Then, kindness isn't a reward for success. It's a requirement of decency. It shouldn't come after someone rises. It should come before they fall. A few clapped. Then more. Soon, the whole hall stood. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her message had landed. Later that evening, Mayor David caught her in the hallway. I hope you weren't too hard on us, he said, half joking. I wasn't hard, she replied. I was honest. He chuckled awkwardly. Of course, of course. Well, if there's anything the council can offer, I need permits fast-tracked for the school, she said flatly. No delays, no excuses. Done, he replied immediately, and I want full autonomy over curriculum and operations. You'll have it. She nodded once and walked away. She wasn't asking anymore. Construction moved quickly. The school was designed to be more than just walls and classrooms. It would house. Students feed them, clothe them, mentor them. Each girl would have a name, a future, and a voice. Hannah insisted on one feature above all: a glass corridor that overlooked the sky. I want them to always remember they can rise, she told the architect. Rachel took on the design of the uniforms, soft gray with phoenix wings embroidered in gold on the collar. Samuel handled tech, working with vendors for laptops, internet, and learning software. This isn't just a project, he said one night at dinner. It's a movement. Hannah raised her glass. Then let's fly. Timothy watched from afar. He stood outside the rusted gate of a nearby property, watching the school take shape. Day after day, he returned. Sometimes just for a minute, sometimes for hours. He never approached. He simply watched, until one day, a guard approached him. Are you looking for someone? Timothy hesitated. Tell Hannah I'd like to speak to her. The next morning, Hannah found him waiting near the construction trailer. He stood up as she approached. I'm not here to ask for anything, he said quickly. I just came to say, it's beautiful. She nodded. I have one request, he said, surprising even himself. Let me work here. She raised an eyebrow. As what? He swallowed hard. Anything. Sweeping floors? Cleaning windows. You want to clean the halls of the school being built on the ruins of the house you once ruled over? He nodded. Yes. Why? Because maybe this is where I earn the right to face what I destroyed. She said nothing for a long time. Then finally, you'll be the janitor. Timothy blinked. Uniform provided. 6 days a week. No special treatment, no acknowledgement, just quiet work. He nodded. Thank you. This isn't mercy, she added. It's a test. I understand. Let's see if you really do. At the construction site, he began the next morning. Old work gloves, a mop, a bucket, a new silence. Some workers stared. Others ignored him. He didn't care. He swept. He wiped. He worked. And each corner he scrubbed, each floor he polished, was a place where once he would have scoffed. Now he bowed his head and worked. That night, Hannah stood under the half-built archway of the school. She ran her fingers along the brick. Rachel joined her, carrying a lantern. You really hired him? She asked. Yes. Why? Because humility is the final gate before change. Samuel walked up behind them. He may never be the man we needed. I know, Hannah said, but maybe he'll become the man someone else needs. The courtyard of the Phoenix School for Girls shimmered under the morning sun. Bright white walls gleamed. Golden phoenix wings spread across the front facade, painted with intricate detail. A carved inscription sat just below the main entrance. Where broken girls learn to fly. Hannah stood beneath it, watching final touches unfold. Workers rushed to finish signage. Teachers moved in supplies, volunteers swept sidewalks. Girls in crisp new uniforms began arriving with wide eyes and worn backpacks. And in the farthest corner of the courtyard, broom in hand, was Timothy. He wore a plain blue shirt and brown trousers. His hair was fully gray now. His face was thinner. His shoulders, once proud and stiff, now slightly hunched with time and humility. He swept slowly, quietly, without seeking notice. He did not look up when Hannah passed. She never acknowledged him directly, but she knew he was there. Inside the school, light streamed through high windows. Polished floors reflected sunbeams. The air smelled of fresh paint and possibility. Timothy cleaned every surface with reverence. He didn't speak much, not to the teachers, not to the students, only to himself. Each mop stroke felt like a prayer, each window polished, a confession. He didn't do this hoping Hannah would change her mind. He did it because this was the only way he knew to make peace. One afternoon, a girl approached him in the hallway. She looked no older than 10, shy, curious. "Sir?" He turned. "Are you the cleaner?" He gave a small nod. "I think that's cool," she said. "You're keeping our school shiny." His throat tightened. "Thank you," he managed. She smiled and ran off. For the first time in decades, he felt something small and warm rise in his chest, something that wasn't regret. That evening, after everyone had left, Hannah returned to the school alone. She walked the halls slowly, her heels echoing. Classroom doors stood open. Bulletin boards were blank but ready. In one room, a single desk had a flower in a jar, placed there by one of the new teachers. Hope hung in the air like perfume. At the end of the hallway, she turned toward the old janitor's shed, the small, square structure Timothy had turned into his workroom. She placed a white envelope on the desk inside. No name on the front, no decoration, just paper, sealed, silent. Then she walked out without a word. Timothy returned to the shed hours later. He was tired. His hands ached. His back protested. He removed his gloves, placed them on the shelf. Then he saw the envelope. He stared at it for a long time before touching it, like it might burn him. He opened it with shaking fingers. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Dear Timothy, I used to wish you'd say, 'Sorry.' I used to imagine you falling to your knees, begging me to take you back. I thought that would be healing, but it wasn't. Healing came in the night I survived, in the man who opened his gate, in the cries of my children, when they were born. In every floor I scrubbed, in every deal I negotiated, in every sky I've flown since. You didn't break me. You freed me. When you closed the door on me, you unknowingly opened another one that led to something far greater than I could have imagined. I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. I will not return to you. I will not look back. I'm flying toward the life I built. You are not part of that flight. But I thank you. You showed me who I never want to be." "Goodbye, Hannah." Timothy sat down slowly, the letter in his lap, his hands shaking. He didn't cry at first. He just stared at the words like they were a map of a country he could never visit. Then, slowly, the tears came. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet drops falling onto the letter. Outside, the sound of laughter echoed from the main courtyard. Girls running, footsteps pounding, voices rising with joy. Timothy stood. He folded the letter with care, slid it back into the envelope, and placed it on the shelf. He looked around the room, at the shelves he had organized, the tools he had cleaned, the windows he had washed. Then he walked outside into the late afternoon sun. The sky was clear, and somewhere far above him, a plane crossed the horizon, silent and strong. The sky was blue like a painting, clean, wide, infinite. On the private airstrip just outside Dawson Town, Hannah stood in the golden morning light beside her jet, the same aircraft that had once turned heads when she arrived. But this time there were no crowds, no press, no noise, just her and her children. Rachel adjusted the strap on her shoulder bag and looked toward the plane. "Are you sure you're ready?" Hannah smiled gently. "I've never been more sure of anything." Samuel glanced at the town fading in the distance. "It feels like we've closed a book." "We did," Hannah said. "Now we're writing another one." Inside the Blue Horizon Hotel, final bags were packed. A quiet knock came at the door, and when Rachel opened it, a hotel staff member handed her a simple box. "No sender name," he said. "Just said it was to be given this morning." Rachel brought it to her mother. Inside was a single item, a small photo of Hannah taken decades ago, laughing, holding a daisy, sunlight dancing across her face. On the back, a note in careful handwriting. "You were joy, and I didn't know how to protect it. T." Hannah held the photo in silence, then placed it gently back inside the box. "I don't need this anymore," she said. Rachel nodded. "Do you want me to leave it behind?" "No," Hannah replied. "Give it to the school's archives. Let it remind someone what love shouldn't be." The black SUV drove slowly toward the runway. The jet engines hummed in anticipation. At the school, girls lined the courtyard, waving. They weren't waving because Hannah was famous. They waved because she had seen them. Each of them carried a story, a scar, a silence, and Hannah had built them a home. She stepped out of the car and turned to look at the building one last time. Timothy stood far off in the shade near a garden wall. He didn't move, didn't wave, just watched. He had accepted the letter, accepted the distance, and now he understood something no apology could ever erase. He was not part of the ending. Rachel placed a hand on her mother's shoulder. "He's here." "I know," Hannah said, not turning to look. "What would you say if he came closer?" "Nothing," she answered. Sometimes silence is the loudest closure. The jet staircase unfolded. The crew stood ready. Samuel entered first, then Rachel. Hannah paused at the top of the steps. She looked up at the sky, wide, endless, open. She whispered, "This time we're flying on our own terms." Then she stepped inside. As the jet engines roared to life, Timothy shielded his eyes from the sun. He didn't wave. He didn't speak. He just watched the plane rise, smooth and sure, as if the sky itself had been waiting for her. Inside the cabin, Samuel poured orange juice into champagne flutes. Rachel tapped a playlist into the console. Soft jazz filled the air. Hannah leaned back in her seat, shoes off, eyes closed. "You've earned this peace," Rachel said. "I didn't earn it," Hannah corrected. "I built it, brick by brick, flight by flight. And you gave it to us," Samuel added. A few hours into the journey, Rachel sat beside her mother and held out a thin leather notebook. "What's this?" Hannah asked. "My journal," Rachel replied. "About the trip, the town, meeting him, everything." Hannah opened it and read the first line. "Closure doesn't always look like forgiveness. Sometimes it looks like choosing peace over permission. She smiled. That's beautiful, Rachel shrugged. You taught me that. Later, Samuel came to her seat. I've been thinking about something. Dangerous, Hannah teased. I want to open a training academy, he said, for girls who want to learn aviation, mechanics, management, fly or build, doesn't matter. As long as they feel the sky is for them too. Hannah's eyes welled, but she blinked the tears away quickly. You're your mother's son, she whispered, and proud of it. The plane landed hours later in a different city. Sleek towers, crisp air, a new chapter waiting. But before they disembarked, Hannah paused again at the door. She looked out at the sky one final time and breathed. Not like someone catching air, but like someone finally released from underwater, free. Back in Dawson Town, Timothy swept the school courtyard. He worked the corners no one noticed, wiped the windows no one praised, changed light bulbs before anyone knew they'd flicker. He never spoke of Hannah, never asked about the children, but in the small room where he rested between shifts, the photo of her with the daisy sat on a shelf, not as a keepsake, but as a reminder of what real love demands. Presence, patience, truth, and of what is forever lost when those things are denied. At the Phoenix School's first graduation ceremony 3 years later, girls walked the stage with wings embroidered on their uniforms and fire in their eyes. One valedictorian said, "We are not forgotten. We are not ruined. We are not burdens. We are fuel." That quote made it to the walls of the school's library, just below a framed portrait of Hannah taken the day the school opened. Far above the library shelves, a skylight poured sunshine into the reading room, and if you stood just right, the light hit the wings on the phoenix crest at the perfect angle, glowing, golden, alive. Some said it looked like it was about to fly. Maybe it was. If you watched until the end, comment the word Phoenix, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your friends and family.